Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook live stream. And oop, I'm in the wrong place. This is the video about the System Shock. Why 90's games are better, and immersive sims, and modern, hyper expensive, under delivering sludge that passes for modern games. So we're gonna be talking all about the. I'm not going to talk too much. Trying to talk too much about the current game industry, but we will be talking some about that, and also we'll be talking about the System Shock remake, which just came out. If you don't know what that is, this is game related stuff. So I know a lot of times I do movie related stuff, but I am actually a game maker, so I just figure I should probably cover games that are directly up, my alley, which is games like this, because it is a cyberpunk game, which I tend to focus on. Also, it's one of the original System Shock 2, um, are or I should say System Shock 2 is the one I actually remember playing the most. I have played System Shock 1, but I will admit freely that I didn't get too far through it because it was a bit difficult to play, to be 100% honest, because in that time it was the first of its kind. Really, that's it was so groundbreaking that it really um, hadn't ironed out all of the intricacies of making this type of game. I'm just trying to get some of the screenshots are a bit creepy, so I'm gonna try to not have all of those. But this is some footage from the remake. It is System Shock is it's a science fictional kind of horror game, in the sense of like the creepy parts of 2001: A Space Odyssey. For people who don't know that much about games, but HAL 9000's the AI in the space crafts that are in 2001, the science fiction movie. HAL 9000's very menacing, kind of creepy way that it kind of turns against its own human creators, and then starts killing them and stopping them, and turning off oxygen, sabotaging their life pods and such. And so System Shock is also about an AI in a space station setting that then turns against its creators. Also, that's kind of the main central premise of it. And so like aliens, has I'm just gonna get some more. Alien and Aliens have like in the first one, Ridley Scott's Alien, you have Ian Holm playing the android. Ash is his name, who turns against the crew of the what was it, the Nostromo? Gosh, I can't remember. I have all the. I can never remember which ship was it, the Sulaco or the Nostromo. It was one of those two. Both of them are late 1900, late 1800s, early 1900s novels. But the Ash, the android, is the kind of AI antagonist, along with the actual ship itself has a interface that you type into, and the master computer basically. I don't think it's called the master computer. That was Logan's Run. See, I've got all the dystopian science fiction all mixed up in my head, but the master computer is you ask it questions, and then the AI is like basically representing the corporation, messages the crew back, right, in the movie Alien. And then there's also an android that turns against the crew halfway, or I should say, well, I won't say when, but there's an android that does turn against the human creators, on behalf of the corporation that created that android, that has its own kind of secret instructions. And it's kind of so that's always been like a key. That's always been like a major mainstay of science fiction. This kind of other than like space and just technological progress, alien civilizations, uh, artificial intelligence, robotics, non-human, like human created life forms, androids, cyborgs, genetically designed creatures. That's like a major obviously major part of science fiction, and it's also a major part of problems that we have today with AI that we're going to get to later in the present moment with the AI generative AI, or the scam of it, I should say. But we'll get to that later. But the System Shock was a game that was definitely like kind of like in that sort of vein of games, and I'm just kind of giving an overview of what it is, and then the I don't want to play too much footage just in case I get in trouble. But the new System Shock has all the things that you might want. It has creepy mutant humanoids created by a what is the term for Shodan? Shodan is the system that has the what was that called? Has the moral locks, the ethical constraints removed by the main character. The main character is actually like a hacker who gets caught hacking a corporation, and then he gets forced to do he gets forced to either die. He can get I think, as they say in the game, he can either get sent back to he can leave Citadel Station in one piece, or you can leave Citadel Station in a coffin. And so he either has to do what the corporation tells him, which is to hack into their system and remove the ethical constraints for an AI that they can't figure out how to remove, so that they can do so this terrible corporation can do even more terrible things with an AI who doesn't want to do immoral things, right? I think obviously it's like human experimentation and all kind of terrible torture based corporate endeavors, right? Or just super unethical things. Not that corporations need some kind of any sort of AI to do. They're already doing these unethical things, but the main character removes those ethical constraints on the system that is known as Shodan. That's kind of visually represented in the image on the left here, and so. Oh, it was up, Slendrid. And so so just looking at the chat. So the characters kind of it's kind of like how I would say like Shodan is similar to how, except Shodan has far more personality, is way more interesting, and obviously is very feminine coded. The character Shodan, which let me get what that actually Shodan acronym. What does that actually stand for? Sentient Hyper Optimized Data Access Network, a search engine designed to map and gather. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a literal. Somebody made Shodan because they're System Shock 90's game nerds. That's why. That's not. Oh, is that? I think that might be the same thing. Is that the same thing? No, that is it. But somebody made a real program called Shodan that does search for you. The sentient hyper optimized data access network, later referred to as Shodan, is an artificial intelligence and the main antagonist of the System Shock series. She is voiced by game writer and designer Terry Brocious, who they brought back for the System Shock remake, which is really cool. Terry is a American musician, voice actress, game writer, and designer. She also she played multiple characters in that game. Marie Delacroix, who is also in System Shock 2. And she was also in Deus Ex, which is one of my favorite. Obviously, I think a lot of people know that, but if they don't, Deus Ex is one of my favorite games of all time. And it's I made an entire modification, a total conversion mod that took me 1.5 years, Terminus Machina, in Deus Ex. That's how much I like that game. I spent 1.5 years dedicated to making the game better. And Terry's also has worked on Deus Ex projects as well. Anyways, and so she this is the visual. This is the face of Shodan that I most know because this is from the System Shock 2. I actually somewhere on the internet you can find. I made an avatar of myself that kind of looked like this. Let me see if I can find that. I actually made an avatar of myself that kind of looked like that. I might not be able to find it. I probably won't be able to find it. No, that's not this one. That's me as a cyber demon. I've done lots of weird cyberpunk avatars of myself over the years. I actually just re-cosplayed Shodan in the last week. Also, I'll show that later. Anyways, so Shodan is a artificial intelligence that is taken over the Citadel station in System Shock. In System Shock 2, she's taken over the ship that you're on. I believe it's a ship. And is basically trying to kill you the entire time. Or not trying to kill you, I'm sorry. She's trying to use you, and then sometimes trying to kill you, depending on what seems to be most optimum for her as a tri-optimum creation. That's actually the tri-optimum is the name of the company. It's the UAC, United. What is it? The United in Doom. It's United something. It's always tri-optimum. Wayland Yutani. It's the corporation du jour, basically, right? I can't remember all of them. MNU is the one in District 9. I can't remember what they all stand for. They're always like some 3-letter acronym, or but Tri-Optimum is the one that the giant corporation, Wayland Yutani equivalent. I would credit Alien with being the first, but Alien not the first, but Alien is one that like really centered a corporation over kind of talk more about corporations, because it was the late 70s, early 80s, and so the corporate that was becoming a bigger, more central topic, was the private corporations becoming more powerful than governments. A lot of cyberpunk, Neuromancer, the cyberpunk genre, mega corporations are running the world in dystopian 2006. Or something, right? Think about Escape from New York, or I guess Escape from New York, maybe not the best one, but right around that late 70s and early 80s time. And then the Alien was like the first like major mainstream film to kind of talk about the Wayland Yutani Corporation specifically, and then of course in Blade Runner, the Tyrell Corporation specifically, being these entities that gain so much, a single corporation gaining so much power. It was more powerful than entire world governments, right? Now, of course, like, I mean, maybe I shouldn't wax Silver Spookish in this moment, but it's like how the relationship between the corporations and governments, companies and private and public, is kind of not necessarily, there's not as much distinction as, let's say, Western economists and people and thought generally likes to make, but at the same time, they were important in the history of science fiction and in the history of, literature, from the perspective of being inside a place like the United States, where things were going into Reaganomics, where all the tax cuts for the billionaires, like that, where that stuff comes from is people inside the United States and places like the United States, right, capitalist countries. That wasn't so much a problem in the other parts of the world. But if you're inside the United States and you're watching wages are flatlining, the unions are being broken up, like the flight workers under Reagan in the 80s, focus on the individual and consumerism and and buy and just consume and focus on yourself. They didn't call it self-care. They just called it number one. Pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. Like self-care, I feel like self-care actually, a lot of it is kind of like pulling. It's like the 20 teens softer, like pastelized version of pull yourself up by your bootstraps, because pull yourself by your bootstraps is 20th century cowboy Hollywood shit, cowboy Hollywood references. But then after that, it became like self-care. It's like, don't ask anyone else to help you out. Just get a bath bomb and deal with all of your mental health and your global collapse and all of the problems in your life. Just get a fuzzy shirt for your, like, buy more stuff to deal with massive problems that are systemic and that you can't deal with individually. Anyway, I'm already off on that topic, but anyway, so back to the AI though. So So System Shock is a game that has the main character trying to survive this super intelligent AI. That is, as we kind of talked about before I lost my train of thought. What about Trioptimal? I just had it open. Oh, it's there. So Showdown is a site. I already read that. The main antagonist of System Shock series. She is voiced by game writer. And so she was created on Earth to serve as the artificial intelligence of the Trioptimum Corporation Research and Mining Citadel Station. The head of her programmers was Showdown was designed as a semi-intelligent, self-sufficient data network, which could. This is a visual of Showdown from the first one, right? The first System Shock, the graphics were like 320. I think it was like pretty. It was like early 90s, and so it was very closer to Sega Genesis or Nintendo graphics. But this is a PC game, and so it's very pixel art. The second one was a bit more. It was late 90s, so it was closer to like StarCraft and Diablo era, and that made a difference to like accessibility. I think, yeah. When I played System Shock 1, it's pretty. The interface was trickier. That's what I really remember about it, and it was really good, but it was just like, I think when I went back to play, it was like I didn't have time to like learn all of the learn everything you needed to learn in order to play it, and but that kind of like limited it. So the remake really helps because then you can get into it, and like from all the reviews, the System Shock remake is faithful to the original 90s game, but also is accessible and palatable to modern gaming audiences. And so like that's really the best thing. I mean, part of this is also I've been playing a lot of different 90s games recently, and a lot of them have remakes and updates that makes them like way better. It's like really, and so that's this is like, obviously this is a video I wanted to kind of focus on System Shock because the remake just came out this week, but also I wanted to just in general there's a lot of games that were really good. There's a lot of music that was really good. Apparently, like, did you see this thing? The Deftones are apparently 90s music, like the Deftones. Deftones are all over TikTok. They're like the #1 sound. Why are they blowing up on TikTok? Deftones songs are trending on TikTok. Like, why are 90s alternative bands like Deftones, the Smashing Pumpkins, and these other ones, right, blowing up all over, like Gen Alpha, like 15 to 30-year-olds are listening to this like all over platforms. Like the music was created when they were not even alive. They would not be a twinkle in their sperm carrying parents' gametes, for another 10 years. A lot of these people that are listening to the 90s music. So it's like, what is happening there? And I'm seeing all these YouTube videos are like, why the 90s was better, or why pre 21st century art was better. There's like a lot of this stuff, and it's not even from, like, I would expect that from a Gen Xer. What was the other one? I would expect like 90s games, 90s music to be popular amongst amongst Gen Xers and Zennials and Millennials. I'm like, I count as Zennial because I'm like right at the cusp between Millennial and Gen X. I'm like 80. I would count myself as Millennial generation, but I was born like at the first year of the Millennial 1983 generation. Anyway, but like it's Gen Alpha people that are talking, they're listening to and using this and like trying to get their goth girlfriend through. It's a long. I watched this one video by Gen Z people that was like basically like in the 1990s, in the 2000s, there were tons and tons and tons of like goth girl animated shows for kids when we were kids in the noughties, and the goth girls that we were watching, and some of that was through Tumblr, were like I can't even remember all the specific examples because I wasn't a kid in the 2000s. I was too busy being an adult in college trying to make money working for giant mega corporations ruining the world. But anyways, for Gen Z, right, they were like kids, and so they were watching this, and so they like, and then they got older, and then a lot of the goth girls like have this on social media would have this certain music, um, and so the Gen Z people would like, and a lot of Gen Z would like listen or be listening to the music that would be from and about the kind of people that they kind of wanted to date, and then and then somehow, and so there's so then the younger generation of goth girls and then goth boys were having that in their social media feeds and in their backgrounds and in their TikToks and such, and then like mainstream media picked up on that and said, oh yeah, we're all Deftones fans, or not to say like Deftones is necessarily like the number one goth, but it's like it was like 90s music, right, was in the background of a lot of these videos, and it was like, and then it just really blew up, and apparently it was a number one trending sound where like all these like the Deftones were like all over the place, and I was like, what, why? I'm like, I don't really go on TikTok a whole lot. I see stuff that comes out of TikTok, but I'm like not spending a lot of time there. But that's kind of that's kind of like a second way into why the 90s stuff is back. But another comment is that like actually a lot of the post 2000s especially early 2000s, everything, entertainment, games, movies, to my mind, like really, I stopped playing games after 2005-6. I really just stopped. Part of that is like, as I said, I was trying to make money in the dystopian capitalist hellscape, and that makes it hard to have a lot of time to play games, right? But also like the games, and I've made this point before. The games, like the game industry in the 90s, right? You could release a game like when John Romero was making games in the 90s, making Doom, right? You could release a game, and if it sold like 1 million copies, that was amazing, right? But a lot of times you release a game, and it was a much smaller industry, right? It was also pre-massive mainstream internet. There was no cell phones as devices with your entire life, your personal life, your work life, your entire history, your ability to get a job, your sex life, and everything coming through your phone. That didn't exist, right, in the 90s. You had to dial up to get to cyberspace, right? Cyberspace was another place where 1% of the population, these weird, bedridden, hermit-like, strange weirdos called nerds, right? And to be a nerd was like that was not a good thing. It was like a derogatory term. There were movies like Revenge of the Nerds, right? Like Rick Moranis like made a lot of career out of like being that one weird class of a minority of people called those nerds and geeks and stuff like that. And those are the only people that were accessing the internet, right? Normal humans used a cell phone and they dialed 555 something something something, and then they got tricked into by the girl at the bar, who was wearing the red dress or whatever. Right? So people used the phone. People talked to each other in person and such, right? And there wasn't this. There was no internet. Period. There was like no internet. It was like there was Web 1.0, and there were a few people on the 2600 Club and the 1337 hackers trying to use a Captain Crunch whistle to play the exact tones needed to hack through a payphone some corporation's database, right? So there's a bunch of weird people and criminals. No, they're not all weird people or criminals, but I mean, it was the internet was a place that was very small and peripheral to, speaking of cyberpunk, peripheral to mainstream meat world culture, to use that's the Gibsonian cyberpunk term, but meat space and the cyberspace. But now it's like there is not really a difference. Everything is, what do they call it? Blended, hybridized cyber meat space. That's a very System Shocky term. That's with all these human machine hybrid peoples, including the main character. But anyways, I'm kind of spiraling too much. But the System Shock, so System Shock was made in this time, right? In the early 90s. It was made in a time in which the game industry, like the internet itself, right, like the online world, was much smaller, and so success was judged by like let me just get like uh and get like an actual number like yeah. So initially, System Shock, it sold 318,000 copies worldwide, and it was deemed a success for that company. I think it was 90's Studios is a studio that remade System Shock. But yeah, so the first one sold 318,000 copies, and it was made by a company called Looking Glass, and Warren Spector is like one of my favorite game designers because he made System Shock and Deus Ex, or led the team anyway. Looking Glass Technologies, Origin Systems, and this company was it was considered amazing that they sold, right. It was a moderate commercial success, selling more than 170,000 copies. I mean, let's just look at like how many Diablo 4 pre-orders. There's a lot of controversy here on this game, but because giant corporations run the world, and Bobby Kotick is a garbage person, like all CEOs of capitalist AAA game companies and all capitalist companies generally. Anyways, Diablo 4 pre-order. I want to see how many are there. This is like a game that's coming out right now, like in the next 3 days or something, right? So this game costs $69.99, and it doesn't cost that because it's trying to be a Gen Z, Gen Alpha meme. It's not because 69 is a nice number to use. It's because they were making a game. I saw these games sell for $100. Like the modern games, the prices are going way up. The deluxe edition is like $90. Okay, so like already, right? How many people have already bought it? Okay, Diablo 4 can Diablo 4 beat out Hogwarts Legacy for the okay, I'm just trying to find what's the biggest game this year? I don't even know. Let's just do the Zelda game. Zelda 2023. What is that new one? Tears of the Kingdom. So Tears of the Kingdom already, right, sold 10 million copies, right? 10 million copies in 3 days. And that's not even close to how many they're going to be selling over the longer haul, right? So so just as a comparison, right? And this game is being also for Pride Month, remember that Link is a gay icon. Link is I think Nintendo said they're gonna have Mario do more gay stuff. I saw I don't know if that's true or not, but I saw a headline and I was like, but anyways, Link is a it's very good symbol for Pride Month. But anyways, happy Pride Month. But anyway, that aside, remember that Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom is the fastest selling game in America's for any Nintendo system ever, and one of the hottest games worldwide for the Switch. Anyways, and so this one is 10 million in 3 days, right? It's probably going to be much more than that over the longer haul, right? Whereas like System Shock, right, sold 170,000, right? 170,000, over the course of its release. That's not like its initial year or the initial window in which it was released. That's not 3 days, right? So that's the kind of scale in which games were. That's the kind of industry that games were operating in that time. Here's another. So you can see it's like it's has 3D-ish elements to it, but it's still very. It's about 320. The resolution is very. Genesis, Super Nintendo. It's very. Not quite Pong, but it's definitely not like early 90's or late 90's level of graphics. It's like it's a little bit under the Resident Evil PlayStation 1, right? Anyways, and so System Shock was released in that kind of reality where there weren't so many. It was not a huge market. It was not like the amount of money people would invest into games was lower, right? I think John Romero. I'm just gonna bring up Doom. What was the studio called? id Software. So like John Romero also it's Happy Indigenous History Month, and John Romero is an indigenous game developer of Yaqui, Cherokee, and Mexican heritage. And John, at id Software, he was designing in the 90's like a game a month at one point, and maybe not at id, but at some of the companies that he worked at early in that time, like Doom maybe took a bit more than that, but I think in the beginning, in the early 90's, late 80's, they were designing a game a month. Like him and his team, you have to come up with an idea, right? He come up with an idea, program the whole game, and there was no game engine. There's no like game making software that allows you to just drag and drop art assets and have a game done. Like Unity, there's no Unreal Engine, which I think System Shock Remake was made in. It was made with the modern Unreal iteration. It was like you had to program all that stuff in assembly from scratch, basically, or in assembly or in C or whatever the language was. But there was no existing software that made it really simple if you don't have a lot of coding skills and very specific like art design skills tailored for game making. And so they had to do that, but they still had to make a game a month. Now you might reuse stuff from previous games, but they had to make a game a month and just get it out there and get it out there and get it out there. And like they'd have like ads in in magazines. They'd mail out letters. Games came on floppy disks at this time as well, so you could fit entire games on like the amount of space it takes. Like modern Instagram images, right? Like the modern Instagram images are the size of like 5 games from the late 80's or early 90's, right? A modern Instagram image can be like multiple megabytes, like 5 megabytes. That's more than the entire game, right? Just one picture of somebody holding a latte and a System Shock, going, "Hey, buy System Shock Remake." I'm the digital booth girl. That's what I do now, because that's my other job as a non-binary game developer, is to also be my booth girl on top of being the writer, musician, artist, programmer, and marketer. Anyways, and so I was trying to find an id Software image. Like this is like back in that time when everybody was just like this is just John making silly faces. That's the face that he makes with like, oh crap, we have to get the game out in the next 2 days. Also, one of these people is like now doing not crappy stuff. I'm not gonna mention his name, but John, as far as I know, John, who's supposed to be on my Indigenous Goths panel last year, he didn't show up, but it's okay. We forgive him. John Romero, because I'm a native Hawaiian developer, and he's a native Yaqui, etc. Indigenous person developer. So we're gonna get him one of these days. But in the 80's, you see, that's why he was too busy like making goofy faces, making Wolfenstein, where you kill Nazis. Before that was problematic for the U.S. circa the 2016, 18, and Wolfenstein. The games were it was a different time. It was you could have a crew of people. The biggest studios, like this was like the biggest studios had a crew of like this many people or less, right? Making a game and then putting it out there. So with the amount of money that's invested, right? With the size of the industry, right? And with the amount of the size of the audience, right? Like the internet itself, right? The computer usage, right? Computer usage has evolved over time from basically being like a handful of people with PhDs at the University of Chicago, the University of Los Angeles, and New York University, specifically PhDs in computer science, right? Trying to network for DARPA, for the U.S. military, and for the Pentagon, trying to create a nuclear war resistant data transfer and communications network in the event of nuclear war. So actually the Cold War and the imperial brinksmanship. Speaking of dystopian apocalypses, play I Have No Mouth and I Have Must Scream if you want to see something that is the intersection of all those things. But the internet began as basically a tiny minority of people who were trying to work on a system, right, a protocol and method to interlink these. Mostly, it was like centralized computers that could store tons of information, like the Library of Congress and all of whatever data that was needed for all of the United States. And then, in the event one of them was destroyed, it could instantly or very rapidly be transmitted to one of these other ones. And so that was the beginning. I mean, a lot of the origin of the internet. I mean, this is not a stream about the whole origins of the internet, but all of that internet and computer lore and history and background is like kind of inseparable from why what this main topic. And so after that initial phase, it kind of expanded in the 80s to, you know, people who were like, you know, a wider range of people. And then by the time you got to the 90s, you had personal computers by the mid 90s, and then dial-up and internet America Online was slowly being rolled out. I remember the first computer at CompUSA. Anybody remember CompUSA? In the 90s, there was this computer. It's like the Dell 486 with a blazing fast. You remember this? Blazing fast, 33 megahertz processor. You know, like 33 megahertz. You know, there are microwaves that are 100 times faster than that. You know, like you can play Doom on microwaves nowadays. So if there's any semiconductors left because of ridiculous new Cold Wars in the West, if they have semiconductors, you know, they have very fast pocket calculators. Well, your phone is a pocket calculator, but in this time, like 33 megahertz and like I remember like what is it? 33 megahertz, like 16 megabytes of RAM was the thing. Nowadays it's measured in gigabytes, right? But RAM was like, you know, you could expand your RAM to increase how many pixels, you know, can be displayed. Like you could go from 320 to 600 and up your gameplay experience by going from 32 to 64 megabytes of RAM, and you'd like add another SIM card in there. And CompUSA, like the internet was so slow that it was. I remember like being in CompUSA, and my family was like looking at a computer right inside this store, and they were like, we're like looking at the computer, and the clerk, the salesperson was like, this computer with the 14.4 patented dial-up modem, you can look at an image of the Earth, like a pixelated image of the Earth, and it downloads in less than 30 seconds. And it like took like 25 seconds, right? But you're like watching the picture of the Earth, right? And there's like little bright green dots representing continents and blue dots representing the ocean, right? And you're like watching this image load. I remember watching that thing slowly load, but it's like, oh my god, you can like download that through the internet, that picture of the Earth, or like a picture of an American flag because it's CompUSA, and that was like amazing, right? It was like, because before the internet could only transmit basically text, or you know, if you wanted to not be sitting around waiting till the heat death of the universe, you would only be transmitting text. But then suddenly the internet could transmit, you know, and even better, you could have a 28.8 modem, or you know, if you were like getting really fancy, like the Tesla of the 90s computer was a 56.6 kbps modem, and then oh my god, man, you could like look at a picture of the pixelated, you know, Earth in a blazing fast 5 seconds, like, you know. Victor Gill says this brings back memories. Well, that's what YouTube is for. It's just a nostalgia engine for people in a dying planet. But no. You know, it is definitely like you know, I'm just trying to give you people a scale, the scale of the difference between then and then the present, right? So, but off of that, so that was the kind of the context in which the 90s games were created, right? Now, of course, like by the time you got to the end of the 90s, right? By 1998, right? Right. Speaking of this time, right? By 1998, you had games like StarCraft, right? And StarCraft, the first StarCraft, right? Had BattleNet, so you could get on there and you could play. And so that one was fast. The internet was fast enough by the late 90s that you could play online multiplayer video games. I remember the first time I ever played Duke Nukem 3D. I think it was in 8th grade or 9th grade. I remember it was 8th grade. So that was about 95, yeah. And I remember like you have to call your friend. Um, you have to call your friend with your computer. Okay, in 1996. Yeah, it was 1996, and you had to call your friend with this interface. Let's see if I can get that visual. I don't know if they're gonna have it. Yeah, you have to call your friend with this interface. That was like a. It was like a. It was through a DOS prompt. Um, like this. Yeah. So you had to go here, right? Sound setup, Auth 32, Sound Blaster Live with an amazing 16 channels of MIDI instruments. So you had like everything sounded like a Casio keyboard in the 90s. That's why people do like mod plug tracker music nowadays, like as a whole thing. There's a whole genre of that now, and people like Alexander Brandon who soundtracked Thief and Deus Ex are like they're like rock stars now, because people like Yamaha PSR 540 like you know um sounds like it's coming out of like a bad elevator, Muzak elevator going up to the 100th floor in the Nakatomi Plaza building, but that kind of Roland Casio keyboard sound. And I'm not talking about the modern ones. I'm talking about like old school ones. Like if you had again, as for instruments, for digital instruments, because you can like reproduce like entire symphonies at the push of a button. That's all Hans Zimmer does nowadays, right? So what does Hans Zimmer? How does Hans Zimmer make a soundtrack? Kind of like how Bono's a hack guitarist makes a soundtrack. You push one button and then you push the enhancify, and you make your one horn sound like it's a giant blasting Transformers butthole fart, and then that's the soundtrack. I don't like modern soundtracks as a musician, to be 100. I like listening to 90s music, game soundtracks and movie soundtracks, especially game soundtracks, because it was just like there was like more musicianship there. But anyways, so where was I going when I went off on that tangent? So you have so the music was different. You didn't have the ability to like reproduce like super advanced orchestral sounds. Dubstep was a dream in Aphex Twin's and what's his name? Orbital's wildest fantasies, while Aphex Twin was driving a tank in the decrepit northern England and making sounds by whacking piano wire against the inside of a bank vault. People have to like physically do a lot of this stuff, and also and musically, you have no access to the kind of entire modern suites. You have like suites upon suites upon suites upon suites upon suites, digitally gendered, not digitally gendered. Although if you have digital gender, that's also cool. It's valid. But digitally rendered entire 150 piece orchestras that can be and a lot of music is even AI procedurally generated nowadays, and that kind of it dulls the creativity, I think. When you have so much power and there's so much, like, you get lost in all of the it's like the Edge, like Bono's Edge, the crappy guitarist that was in that movie about guitarists, and he was the one who like doesn't know how to play guitar. There's like Jack White and was it the Led Zeppelin guitarist, and then there's this dork from Ireland. I mean, no shade to Ireland. Shade to this guy though, because he's not very good at guitar. And all of the Christian music sounds like he's playing inside your church. Ask Holly. So, and so, but it's like there's so many effects upon effects upon effects upon effects. It just sounds like the same, like, three notes played and then echoed, chorused, reverberated, reverberate, chorus, phasered, and then like flanged, and then reverberate, echo, chorused with a bit crush, and and then a spectral enhancification effect on top of all of that. And it's just like, I don't know how to play music, but if I put enough effects that I bought for $70,000 from the Easy Music or from whatever, whatever, like, I'm not a musician, but I wish I was a rock star for upper class privileged pasty dudes, store.com, whatever microtransaction, imperial capital sink that I threw all my money into to buy all of this equipment to make myself a musician without practicing more than an hour, like the Blues Dad, It's and so the effects are there to take what should be actual skill and talent and creativity and replace that with something that you can buy, right? Kind of like AI art, NFTs, or crypto. You could like, I don't have any actual skill or talent, but maybe I can like get other people with talent to like make a bunch of stuff that I can then push a button and say that I made. And so that's what the Edge is. He's the digital equivalent of AI generated content. I'm just kidding. He didn't. At least he played some notes. He's not quite that bad. Anyway, I just pissed off like half of the universe now. The wrong half of the universe. But anyways, so if you like the Edge guitar playing, I'm sorry, not really. So inside of this interface, coming back to the 50 threads, 50 tangents back, you had to go to this setup. Okay, so if you wanted to play Duke Nukem 3D multiplayer, right, with a maximum of I think 4 players or less, maybe 2. I only played with 2. You have to go into an interface like this in your command prompt, in your command line. A lot of people like freak out. They see the blue screen, they think, "Oh, my computer's dead now." Or maybe they see the blue screen and they don't think anything because they're so young. They have never been exposed. They have never had the abject horror and terror, right, of seeing. Like people are gonna play Neofeud now. That's my millennial zennial doing all of the last 40 years of history and everything I'm talking about now in a video game, right? There are people now who will never have experienced the true survival horror. You think playing Rust, you think System Shock Remake, you think that's true survival horror. You know nothing. You do not know what pain is. But you will learn, and then but you don't even know what it means to get a general protection fault on your 1996 Dell 4086 PC with Intel inside. You don't know that feeling. And then getting it every day, 3 times, 8 times a day, right? And there is no Windows automatic update to help you. There's no. You must search the general protection fault, 8 hexadecimal code yourself, and send a bug report by smoke signal to the Microsoft mega corporation, and there is no one to save you. Anyways, okay, so let's get you have to go to this blue screen, and you have to like type in all this. Basically you have to find your TCP/IP, your IP address. You have to get your IP address correct, get the port, and all these technical details. You have to like type in, and then you have to make a phone call to your friend through your computer's modem. You basically had to be a hacker of some kind. And the guy who I was playing with, he basically was one of the very dark gray hat shade kind of hacker. This other person. We're not friends anymore. Just to be clear, I don't never violate TOS. I never do anything illegal ever in my entire existence. But he would have to call me, or I would call him through the computer. There would be this handshake of all this hissing and humming and weird harmonica sounds that you can imitate if you have a Steve Wozniak brand hacker whistle. Those are the real hackers. People think, oh, because I played Cyberpunk 2077 and I did my Mantis arm backflip and I shot some computer chips out of my butt into the Militech Bank or whatever. That's hacking. I think that's how hacking works in Cyberpunk 2077. You think you're a hacker now? You don't know shit. Hacking is this tedious work of looking at text files and trying to get 25-digit numbers with lots of periods correct. That's what real hacking is. You don't know what you're doing. You know nothing, Jonathan Snow. Anyways, so you know nothing, Deftones appreciator on TikTok. You know nothing. So but so you have to dial. The point I was making before I did all this fun little asides is that it was very difficult even to play a multiplayer game, right? Whereas when you get your let me unwind and close some of these. Okay. When you get Zelda, right? When you get your Zelda game, Tears of the Kingdom, you're already online. You're never offline, right? You're just always on the internet, period. right? Like I am all, as well. I mean, I'm not saying just you, everyone is. I wake up and I'm like already like my brain is making the next tweet that's gonna have 50 million people looking at it, and I'm thinking about how I can make it more spicy so that more people quote tweet it, and wrong people get mad at me when I tell them truth about indigenous people in Hawaii and U.S. imperialism. And so everyone lives online, to an extent, whether they like it or not. I mean, you can't have a job, you can't have a life without the online universe, right? There are a bunch of pretentious people who that run off to their digital detox cleanses, but they're full of shit actually most of the time. Even Chris Pine has a flip phone. He's probably the most offline person. But that's because he's smart. And also he has an amazing willpower. I don't know how he can handle this. I don't know how he didn't know who Jordan Peterson was in 2020 or whatever year it was that Olivia Wilde asked him. But anyways, back to the Zelda. So when you when you buy any game, you're instantly online. You have to be online to even buy that game, right? You're buying it in Steam. You're buying it in the digital store, right? You don't go to a physical CompUSA. You're in this world, and not only that, but it's you. Let me just check. Here's so Epic Venture, and like once you buy these games like Final Fantasy 14, these are just massively online multiplayer games, right? There was no such thing as multiplayer games. They're basically like you could play with a friend maybe online. You could play with another friend on a console. You could play 1 and player 2 on a Nintendo, right? But there was no 50,000 people all playing inside a server, right? There was no collective lived-in universe with origins from the cosmic egg and lore that is trillions of pages long. I don't have time and headspace and the mental RAM and energy to fucking sit through. That's why I make games that are like Neofeud, and you can play through these games and then the story and then you're done. It's RPGs are just I can't. It's just too much. It's like you have to having to be an adult and adulting all over the place and surviving the capitalist dystopian hellscape and then doing all these other things. I just don't have the mental space myself. And also I'm a game designer, so having that other world in your head. This is something that it's it can be kind of just one more aside before I look at Zelda, which is not what I'm supposed to be talking about, but I don't care. Is that when you're a creator, you lose a lot of the space that would be freed up to absorb all of this mountains of when was the Middle Earth knockoff world first established, and what king came before what king what king of this kingdom of what ocarina did the first hero play that brought forth the age of Aquarius or Virgo, or the age of Zelda and her twink boyfriend. I can't keep track of all that data and all that. This is lots and lots of world building stuff. When you're trying to create your own world that has its own history and timeline. I have the Neofeud timeline, the Neofeud 2 timeline. I have to remember what year Proto-J became the Deus Machina God machine that would come again in glory, would come again in digital glory to judge the currently running and blue screened and wash away the rust of this world. I have all this other stuff I gotta be remembering, so I don't have time. That's like Neofeud lore from the game that I'm currently finishing. Neofeud 2 is, I have 15 more rooms to finish, so I'm trying to finish one a week, and it should be done this year. At least the first rough version should be done. So that's an update on Neofeud 2. But it's hard to keep all that shit in your head, so that's why I can't play MMOs. I can't play huge RPGs. I can look at them. I haven't even played System Shock Remake because I'm too busy, and overtaxed. Not that we should cut taxes on billionaires, but it's over mentally and time sunken. So when you play this game, you're gonna get it right, and then you're gonna jump into a world of a huge, massive, expansive world that cost a lot of thousands of people to work this game for years, and tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people will ultimately buy it, right? And it's all going to be on the internet, and it's all going to be massively multiplayer, and all of those things impact and Zelda's probably from what I understand, it's one of the least one of the least not good modern games. You know, like there's much worse. I mean, you have Diablo 4 is having all kinds of horrible problems. You've got Hogwarts Legacy. You got on top of the capitalism and watered down schlock sludge, which I haven't talked about yet, but the modern hyper expensive under delivering sludge that is big AAA game industry. You also have this turf problems, and you got these terrible people pushing terrible ideologies like J.K. Rowling, right? Running the modern games like Hogwarts Legacy, which also look like crap. I mean, how do you spend millions and millions of dollars on the game, and you spend it all on the website and all the marketing? I mean, I'm not joking about that. Like literally, that's what CD Projekt Red basically did. They spent billions of dollars making trailers for E3 and putting Keanu Reeves in their games and not making a game for 10 years. That was a really great business strategy. It's called don't make anything. Take investment money, put it with a corporate buyback in your CEOs and your executives and shareholders' pockets, and don't make shit for 10 years. Just run on the hype, literally, right? So that's a whole problem with modern gaming, right? Which is that gets wrapped up, right? On top of the bigotry and the terrible ideologies of the creators, then you have the capitalism problem where because the game industry got so big, right? And this is just one. I mean, CD Projekt Red is just one that didn't make a game for 10 years, basically, or made a game and then broke it 10 years in a row, 3 times, and literally made the executives billionaires while their workers were actually being horribly mistreated, and they made a big yellow apology with, by now giant corporations having that apology letter with a matte yellow or a matte blue or a matte magenta background is like it's just the norm, right? The gaming industry went from the gaming industry went from id Software, right, or System Shock Looking Glass team. It went from like a team of 3 or 10 or 15. Usually mostly dudes, were which is we could have more diversity there, but it's a small team of 5 or 10 people, right? Trying to find the actual people who made the game, the original. You had Looking Glass Studios, right? Just a bunch of people making the game, in a month, or in a year, or maybe a couple years at most. The games didn't go on for 10 years. The team would come together. They have this game design. Sometimes Warren Spector would be sitting on it. Like, I'm thinking about making this game called The Troubleshooter, and I don't know if I can make it with this studio, but but they have like a plan. Implement, or sometimes they don't have a plan. They're just like, we'll make it up as we go. You write the story, you write the code, you write the baseline code, you make some of the art assets, and you just start throwing that thing in there, and you have kind of an overall design. Story writers come in sooner or later, depending on how story centric the game is. If you have Tetris, is not that story heavy, but you get it done in 6 months or a year, and then you on to the next project, right? And the project has the creativity of a very specific, not necessarily you have to have a small team to make something that's really original, unique, and with high creative and artistic merit. But the way that the game was made was that you had a small group of people come together, have ideas, right, that they had, and everyone will have different ideas. Even you could people point out that when you play Doom, right, the original Doom, you can feel when John Romero was designing the room and when it was one of the other designers. I can't remember all their names, but one of them was very much the design was tons of enemies. It was like a huge war, and you have to just slogging through enemies. And the John Romero style levels were very very clever and tricksy, trapsy, and lots of secret rooms, and lots of you have to kind of think about what you're doing, and you get snuck up on frequently. And so the style of the gameplay is revealed of the individual designers, on top of the style, the art style, and the kind of themes of the game, which is it's not as huge, and the production value is not the scale of modern game. But the point is that the kind of environment that the games are being created in is one of not super high corporate capitalistic pressure, and there is some because there's some investment, but it's not that huge, right? There's it's offline for the most part. There's no online, it's a tiny industry, right? 1%, a tiny niche industry that nobody. It's like the industry for underwater basket weaving. I don't know if that's a thing that has an industry. So I'm sorry if there's a huge industry of the 7 billion people that all they do all day is buy and sell underwater basket weaving. But it's not like the industry of like people who collect weird gumball machines. But the game industry wasn't much bigger than that in the 90s, right? But now it's like everywhere. It's like the game industry is 3 times the size of Hollywood, which is massive, right? It is like it's literally everywhere. It's like it's people literally eat, drink, sleep, breathe, and spend all day long in games. I'm not even joking. I mean, it's probably unhealthy for a lot of people, right? And so so the game world is just a much bigger world, and the way the games are designed. So that's part of why the 90s games are different. So the games that got popular in the 90s, they didn't really get. No games in the 90s got as big as any game in the last 10 years. Because there were not that many people who even had the system to play such a game. People heard the thing about Doom, right? The thing about Doom was that Doom had all this controversy around it in the 90s because parents thought Doom wasn't the only one, but parents worldwide deplored Doom, and many younger gamers were forced to play only when home alone. The controversy was stirred up when perpetrators of the 1999 Columbine high school shooting were revealed to have been fans of the game. So the Doom controversy in mainstream America, where parents are, oh my god, there's all of this, there's this terrible game where your children are being either brought into satanic cults and converted to the Antichrist's legions or something, or like they're just being having this terrible violent bloody games that's going to scar them and damage them and make them into murderers, and right. And that was the Doom got big through mainstream Western audiences because of the controversy. But most of those people that were talking about Doom, the adults that were talking about it, they weren't actually playing it, right? It got known, but it's not like it was nowhere near the scale of people played Doom as the current people playing the latest Zelda game, just as an example, right? It ran on a DOS stack of floppy disk. Yeah. Anyways, I'm not gonna go through all the history. This is I just wanted to kind of talk about as I said, why 90s games and that's part of why I think the 90s games are better in the way, like when I say 90s games are better, obviously that's an opinion, right? That's just my opinion, man, obviously. But like when I say better, what I mean is better than things that are out now in these certain ways, right? And part of it is in the way that they're produced is it's just different. It's like the difference between an indie game and a AAA game in some senses. But even indie games are different now because again, all those differences between the 90s digital reality, the world in the 90s, right, which had no massive online reality, digital reality to it, right? Is not the modern reality. So I am an indie game developer. I basically gotta make Neofeud 1 and Neofeud 2 as an independent, basically a solo dev doing writing, music, art, programming, etc. With the exception of some things like the voice acting, but it's different in a sense that like, it's easier to make games because of the tools. But like it's kind of like having access to all the musical like Hans Zimmer having all the ability to push a button and generate hundreds of instruments and make the patterns automatically come out. It's like you have all these powerful tools like Unity and Unreal and all these other engines and things that I don't even know because I'm mostly making games in like retro older game engine called Adventure Game Studio. That's kind of a niche for adventure games of the 90s style. And so speaking of 90s games like LucasArts and Sierra, and And so, but you're releasing the games in a different reality. You're releasing the games, even though, right, Silver Spoon Games and other indie games studios aren't run as basically Ponzi's pyramid schemes where you pretend to have products and then make money by getting investment money and then giving it to yourself, right? That is the business. That is the business plan of modern game companies, right? For the most, even smaller ones, it's basically like, hey, please give me money to make a thing that might exist, right? Please give us CD Projekt Red, and here's a yellow apology letter every so often. Or give us, EA, give us Activision. So the AAA game companies are looking at major banks and the big investors, like big capital, to get money, and then smaller game makers are they're trying to get it on Kickstarter, and they're trying to get pushed through Patreon, and they're trying to get crowdfunded, right? And like it is what it is. Like, I mean, even like we have Patreon to try to help get Neofeud too, and a lot of the money that we get does come through support of people like who want to see Neofeud too, and that's fine. But that is not the reality that people were making. Like when id Software, when Looking Glass, and they made games in the 90s, that wasn't a reality that they had, right? And so, and to be clear, like if you're supporting like actual artists and actual people who are developing, programming, writing games, and directing films, and making music, and making art, that's like, I'm not trying to say that that's invalid. Like that's like really great, because one of the positive things about that is there's an explosion of actual art and creation and games and all kind of other creations that wouldn't exist without them. So which is a good thing. I mean, there being 1%, the industry being 1% of the industry in the game industry being 1% of what it is now in the 90s is also negative in the sense that we're missing. There's lots of things that could have been made, but they weren't made because the tools and the technology were not there in the 90s, right? On the other hand, also you have because it's now massive, you also have the massive industry capitalism, and then like the mass audience and watering down elements to it, right? And I think a lot of people are recognizing now in the 2020s, right? I think that's part of this. Why is the Deftones back? Why are all these why are they doing a System Shock remake? Why are there all of these boomer shooters everywhere? And like young people are playing them. Like I talked about this one game I recently played. This game is just like one of them. Like Hedon is a game that was made in the GZ Doom engine. That is Crystal Punk Underworld 90s FPS. But this game is made with the Doom engine, like an updated Doom engine, right? But it's because so many fans, they love the game so much, they like put all this extra labor into making a engine that takes that original 90s system, makes it accessible and working on all the modern systems, and then people are like it's not the only one. There's lots of these, right? I can't think of all the modern GZ Doom standalone. There's like lots of these now. They're exploding all over the place. Like here's a wiki that has all of them, or most of them. Like this is like a huge list of these, right? And a lot of them are like actually like this is one I've been keeping an eye on. That's probably, speaking of System Shock. It's like it's a sci-fi shooter in the GZ Doom engine that's being made by this team called Altered Orbit Studios, and it's similar to System Shock. It's you're being chased around on a space station, and but anyway, so this would not be possible in the 90s either, right? But I think that people are making more of these. Sometimes they call them boomer shooters, or just like they call them boomer games, even though the boomers were the parents of people. I don't quite understand that, but I guess it rhymes, boomer shooters. But the boomers, the boomer generation were like 40 years old with their 8-year-old, 10, 12-year-old millennials playing these games, right? So it really should be called millennial shooters, but they call it boomer shooters more snappy. But people that are like 16 to 30, 16, 20, 25, 30 now are like going back and like discovering these games and then making their own versions of them. I think in part because they recognize the problems with the giant modern games like Hogwarts, and like this guy. You know, the giant CEOs. I mean, they watch a lot of Commander Sterling, or have, you know, and they're like learning. When they don't have to just like see all these terrible problems, right? That these giant CEOs that have toxic abuses of their workers have been screwing over their, you know, both in terms of underpaying, in terms of like no severance packages and letting mass layoffs, in terms of crunch culture, which is just like working 100-hour like grueling, you know, like bone grinding weeks of labor and then getting laid off after that and not being paid for a lot of that. So the game industry and it you know is just like, you know, and then simultaneously the microtransactions, like pay to play, pay to win, all these schemes in the game industry, right? With the, you know, EA Games, you know, just buying up all these other companies, merging everything, taking over companies, and then making the games that were good crappy, or just throwing the games away. In a similar way to why there's a Writers Guild strike, solidarity with the Writers Guild, and directors and actors possible strike, in the sense that giant entertainment corporations, of whether those are film, TV, you know, Disney or game, right? They're taking the people that are trying to make and maximize, the capitalists at the top trying to maximize their personal portfolios, who don't need any more money. They're already making billions and tens of billions a year. Are just like taking the games, making them worse, filling them with microtransactions, filling them with just basically like dopaminergic manipulation machines that are like gotcha games, and I don't even know all the names of them now, but you know, basically like doing everything to squeeze as much money out of people without with as minimal effort into making a good game. And then if you are a kid or in your teens, 20s, right, you're encountering all of these games coming out now that are like just not, they're over promising, under fulfilling. They cost $70, you know, like Diablo 4. They're like riddled with these controversies. I don't know, yeah. Have mountains of bugs. They're released like 1/3 complete or just absolutely broken. Like, remember, people have already forgotten, because of how good the game industry is at brainwashing everyone, that like millions of people had their machines broken, or just had the CD Projekt Red game September 2077 come out and it didn't even work. It like actually broke PC computers. It caused PlayStations and Xboxes to like overheat, and it had all these problems because the games were just like not being completed and released properly, because that would save money for the executives who just wanted to pocket money, right? So literally, I said the modern capitalist industry is worse than any Trioptimum, Wayland Yutani. Is worse than any dystopian cyberpunk nightmare. Like, I think I was actually the most accurate, right? The game companies, like most companies, they like Boeing companies that make planes that crash and then make $40 billion, having an entire Boeing 737 MAX line just iced, right? Like the F-35 at the highest level, the U.S. military as a capitalist empire around the world makes entire jet fighters that don't even function, and they overcharge like 1,000 times or 100 times what they should be charging to make those, or Patriot missile systems that don't work, right? And so the game companies kind of mimic at the highest levels the imperial Western power of the United States, like all the other industries, right? Tesla is worth Tesla made less than 1% of all the cars in the auto market in the 2010s, yet was valued more than Toyota, Honda, Chrysler, Mercedes, and every other actual car producing company combined, right? So it's this idea: if you don't make anything, you just make mountains of hype. Pretend you have, like Elon Musk did TED Talks. You have promotional material, but that's not a product. That's just promotional material. It's just somebody talking. That's a bunch of hype, right? You pay people to hype your thing up, and then with the hype, you get investor money from the 0% interest rate, quantitative easing infinity, U.S. Imperial Central Bank, and then you buy back your stock. You reward yourself with millions for not making anything, but getting investment money from a giant money printer, right? That goes burr, and that's the business model for the last 10 years, certainly, right? Since 0809 when they started this policy, and so and so what you get is you don't get any games, or you get like, if you get a game after 10 years, maybe, but maybe you just get nothing. Maybe you just get broken piles of shit. And so the 90s didn't have the 90s. It's not like capitalism doesn't exist. It's not like this problems of mega corporations ruining everything didn't exist, but like the those specific problems, that degree of the problems were not as bad, and the game industry was not on the radar of the giant corporate mortar eye, if that makes sense, or not so much, because it was just like some weird thing that kids were doing. You know, it was like 5 or 10 of the weird kids. Their mommy and daddy might have been at Wall Street investing in Oprah or investing in Lockheed Martin, right? Or investing in I don't know, Toyota or whatever corporation was making money in the 90s. But they were not putting billions of dollars into id Software, trillions of dollars into Looking Glass. You know what I'm saying? It was that's what the kids on the like in the Nakatomi Plaza building. You had stock traders, you had the savings and loan criminals, you have all these right. You have all of these hedge fund managers. You have hedge funds, right? Financial bankers, people investing in the wars, the Gulf War, right, and all of that military-industrial complex. And then in Texas, where Iron Storm was, you have this one little weird cubicle in the edifice of the corporate and military complex, right, in the 90s. And there's this one little corner where all of the black sheep of the family, right, think of Keanu Reeves' character in Bill and Ted, right? His dad is like a nasty right-wing corporate general type who wants his son to go military school, right? And it's like all these long-haired, metal-listening, rock guitar playing, Socrates, dudes are like smoking pot, hanging out in this one office, and like making weird metal-ass games where you shoot zombies and Nazis and demons, right? And it was kind of like a weird... Games were a little... it was a job because people were making these games and then selling them, right? But it was a small little pastime, tiny micro industry of kind of countercultural, long-haired, leather-wearing, goth indigenous-led... not necessarily all queer, but they were like not mainstream society people doing computer programming, art, and design, and storytelling to an extent on the sidelines of the mainstream Western capitalist society. But now, the entire building, right now, right, if you have an EA Games, right, if you have an Activision, entire buildings are game companies, tech companies, right? The flagship business of the Empire is these open world Empire games, like Call of Duty. I'm just making jokes about that because that's what it is. Like these things are the whole business. They are the mortar eye is on the games now. It's like, how can the number one recruitment tool for the U.S. military, Marines, Air Force, Navy, and Army, is through Twitch gaming, people playing first-person shooters, right, with their headsets and their gaming chairs, right, with military-branded devices even, right, playing shooters with real, very hyper-realistic military guns used in the game, and then the U.S. Military recruiters will pull people straight from there. They go, hey, son, you want to get a great job doing stuff like this, but, like, for real, though. Like, for real, like, in the military, fighting wars in Afghanistan and Syria and Iraq and all this kind of war crimes. And so it's like literally the business is the gaming industry, right? Of both the military-industrial complex, the corporations generally that are just making money selling the games, and everyone up and down is involved in that, where they were a sideline. That's a huge other layer, right? When we talk about why the 90s games were the way that they are, and why modern games are the way that they are, and you can still kind of reproduce some elements of the 90s games in the indie world, right? And so obviously that's where I tend to like to work in. I have worked for those large AAA game companies, and it's a nightmare. Let me tell you, you will get yourself laid off the second that they can manage it. You will work your 100. I know people who work like 160 hours straight crunch, and they thought it was normal and cool. Now people will come out. They would come out with gray hair at the age of 23. That was the norm. And some of these are Japanese companies, which some people say Japan isn't a utopia. No, like it's like there's a lot of really terrible stuff that goes on there and in their very toxic cultures, unfortunately. Um, you know, in both, you know, in the U.S. companies and in their companies, because you know the United States very much, you know, collaborates with them, including in making needless proxy wars that I'm not going to talk about now because it's not the main subject. But just, you know, just the culture inside of large corporations, are the way they operate. Because Silver Spoon Games is a non-capitalist cooperative. Well, the games end is mostly me, but Holly and I both work in different aspects. But in a large corporation like that, and the games industry has its own particular flavor of terribleness. It's the culture is always going to prioritize the profit over people, right? That's why the writers are all striking now, because they're all being replaced by plagiarism software and statistical language mimicry machines called AI. They're not AI. Shodan is very displeased with the humans, who are the mostly wealthy, privileged white dudes, calling their plagiarism software like ChatGPT AI, because that's not actually AI. But the same problems that are causing those problems, right? That are why part of what a lot of people are just being displaced by is not necessarily the AI themselves. They're just being threatened with that, and making it. It's being used as kind of a cover to just do mass layoffs, right? Oh, it could end the world and everything is changing. I mean, things are changing, but you don't. It doesn't have to be. Things don't have to be happening the way that they are. They're happening the way that they are because capitalism, with the technology of very advanced large language models, is the technical. I am a programmer, so whenever I see the AI articles, I'm like, you know, this is why we have problems, because you know most people don't understand how the actual computer technology functions, and it does have uses, but the way they're using it is not. It's similar to the NFT, and it's similar to the things I said about corporations just being hype engines to take investor money and then pay off the executives at the top with it's just like a fence. It's just a pass-through mechanism for money to come out of a central bank and then go into billionaire and millionaire pockets. That's all they are, right? And so AI is kind of like that. It's just take money, print that money, put it into into this company, and we're going to pay ourselves that, and then fire a bunch of workers, making the company worse off and pretending like AI is going to fix all the problems, right? AI is going to fix all those problems, right? And so those misuses of the language mimicry technology of ChatGPT or of these other devices, or other types of large language models and digital. The actual term is, you know, is basically plagiarism software. That's the Stable Diffusion, and these movies and the language. But I mean, the more generous term is large language models, right? Or large art mimicry models. They have these pictures of the Mona Lisa, and like, look, I painted the rest of the Mona Lisa, and like I have like a thousand times bigger picture that's just like empty space, right? So the idea, like, and people unfortunately can be, especially people who raised in scamland, also known as the Western capitalist world, can be easily misled into believing things, especially when science fiction. And I guess, you know, in partially all of us science fiction writers, you know, we have at least some hand. But I want to say that most of the stories that I make are trying to be more realistic about what AI actually is and what could and would happen, right? Like Terminus Machina, where corporations like kind of take the AI and ruin everything, rather than the AI itself threatens people per se, like Skynet, you know. But the thing is, like, either way, right? The same things that are causing the mass worker mistreatment, mass worker underpaying, why there is a writer's strike, why there WGA strike, why all these creators and lots of people are very upset and striking and resisting in whatever way that they can, is the same reason why the 90s is very similar to the reason why the 90s games are different from now. Um, in the and there is it is possible that you could have an AI that you that the AI could it does enable people to do can the generative or the large language models, right, like ChatGPT, can enable people to be more productive, yeah, if they were used in that way. Um, if they could enable people to do a lot of things a little faster, like having your schedules made. But the thing is, a lot of the stuff that these things are doing, there's things that you can already do with Google, right? It's like what I need something. What I need a schedule for my week. There's Google Calendar. There's like stuff that can already basically do that, right? And there are even like Cortana. There's already devices that are basically doing these things without necessarily needing to scrape the data and work of writers and novelists and fanfic creators and image and deviant artists and just creative artists generally, and then take all of that stuff and then scrub it of its original creators and then throw it back, right? It was like if you need a stock image, just go to an artist and like, oh, this is the artist I'm using, or I'm referencing this work, and just give them credit and then use that image inside of your your flyer or whatever, right? But the thing is, like, the AI generator, what it does, it actually makes it worse because the art is coming from somewhere. It's just you have no idea where it's coming from, and a lot of times it comes out and it's worse because you have a stock photo of a Halloween, a person in a kind of like a Halloween costume of a ghost, and you're seeing the kid's hand and he's got like 7 fingers, or everything is just like all messed up and it's not the way that it's supposed to be. And people are now noticing, like, is this Facebook group going to be all AI art now? Because like AI is becoming like a very negative term, like crypto and NFT before them. They kind of have the same kind of people that are peddling it. Just like you can tell when the same people, the same money grubbing, duplicitous, line cheating, stealing, killing dudes mostly who peddle the NFT and the crypto, and people like Bobby Kotick are the kind of people peddling the AI are the same people. You're getting, people are a little quicker coming to the scam that they keep trying to run, which is that they're making a product when there isn't actually very much product there. And in fact, what they're doing is taking other people's labor value and then appropriating it for themselves, taking credit for it, and then trying to get tons of money, stealing other people's work, taking credit for other people's work, that's all basically capitalism. It's just like going, I am the job creator because I had millions of dollars from my daddy before me. But that's not actually producing anything of value. That's just being very well placed in an unjust system, historically, right? Yeah. But anyway, that's kind of off the topic. It is now 12:42, which I'm going to end soon. But System Shock, but back to System Shock though, and 90s games though. So that's why they're hyper expensive, right? So that's why you have games that are, in part, the games are going up to, $100, right? That's, I'm trying to find that one. This System Shock. Like I love, I really like. Ooh, what the hell just happened? Like I really liked Diablo, like I'm a big fan of Diablo. But Diablo 4, unfortunately, how much does it cost? With its unholy amount of bugs, it costs $99. Okay, $89. Okay, $70. So it's like $70. It's a lot of money. I know it's a bigger game, but still, that's a lot of money. And then on top of that, you have all of these, you have to pay more money in game a lot of these times. It's just it's like everything else. It's about squeezing, and corporations have even admitted the inflation isn't necessary. Corporations are just collectively raising the prices in order to make more money because they think they can get away with it, because they feel like it's basically like they've actually said, if the public is flooded with these stories, it only matters is how much we can raise prices until people start getting really upset, and it causes a problem for us. So they'll ratchet up the tension on the population as much as they can get away with it. It doesn't have to do with like how much it costs to make their product. Like again, like the Disney Corporation and all these other entertainment corporations, right? They're making $30 billion a year. It would cost less than like the discrepancy on the CEO pay for these corporations is less than how much the writers are asking for. Just a discrepancy, right? So like with less than like 3%, everything the current writer strike, which could end all of your Hollywood movies, all your shows, your Abbott Elementary, all your Marvel movies, all your Disney movies might not be coming out if this thing goes on for, I mean, a long time, and it could, because they are playing for all the marbles here, because the corporations are basically threatening to get rid of almost all the writers and basically get rid of all the unions, which are premised upon these writers' rooms, right? So if the companies don't need, right, these companies don't need to raise prices on your Netflix is now cutting off anybody who has more than one household. They're cutting that off. If you have more than one household that's not in the same place, they're revoking access to Netflix, raising prices on all the things. They don't actually need to do that. They could like take a very, 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 very slight profit cut, and the profits are already ridiculously over just way too big. They could lose a little bit there and then pay people what they need, and then the products will actually be good. People will be happy, and the products will actually come out, right? And inflation, when the prices of the eggs and the wood and the cars and everything was going up, that was not all of that was necessary. They could have not raised the prices as much as they did, but they did because they felt they could get away with it, which they basically did, right? And so and a lot of this is based on where the public sentiment, where the general attitude of the people lies, you know. And so that's where like all of these hype about AI is going to replace everybody. AI is going to replace everybody. You have to prove your worth to the company. AI is going to do this. AI is going to do that. AI is going to do all these things, right? It's not about what AI can or can't do. Like whether CD Projekt Red finished Cyberpunk 2077 in 2013, whether the Tesla company is worth more than every other car company combined. What matters is what the public views, what the masses. It's really an information and psychological warfare, right? And struggle. What the people view and will accept and tolerate as the reality is what actually makes or breaks any of these corporate actions, you know. And so like, but also if it's like basically, how bad can we make it until people rise up? So wherever that is, right? Because it's not like if the price of a video game goes to $200, if the price of I don't know eggs or goes to $50, to $20, if the price of whatever product, right? If the price of your toilet paper goes up to $30, if people go, oh, that really sucks, but I'm gonna tolerate that because I don't know what else I can do. If people don't rise up again, that's why some countries that are not the United States have better consumer and worker, worker and consumer conditions, is in part because the corporations that do sell things there deem it that like they can't go past this limit because there will be too much backlash. It will cause them too much problems. But basically, it's like if they can get away with something, they will get away with that thing, right? And so that's also why like what people put out there, right? What is said in the in the discourse, in the zeitgeist, in the milieu, right? About artificial intelligence, about why is inflation happening, about where are the game companies, and what even about capitalism itself, right? The more people are feeling like rising up, striking, or doing something, right? Then not impacts how far that's how politics actually functions. It's not actually like when you vote for somebody in a voting booth, everything changes, and once I vote a socialist in, once I vote in my AOC, everything suddenly is in socialist utopia. No, politics is a constant, and the politics is actually happening in the public conversation and in the real world actions. Like the strike is a political act. The strike is because it's part of the ongoing forever economic and ideological warfare between classes, which is a thing that is not acknowledged, but whether you like it or not, it's always happening, right? The layer of like, well, if you vote for this Democrat, it's going to get better, and this Republican is going to get things better for It's gonna get worse, except for white dudes. That is not where politics happens. Politics happens in games. All games are political, in what they're conveying and what they're not conveying. It happens in the minds of every person, and it happens every day, every second of every day. When these companies feel pressured because their stock is plummeting by $10 billion because rioters have stricken, that is a real economic material impact on dozens of the biggest corporations, right? Like Disney, etc. Right? When the AAA game companies are losing their ability to draw players in because they're accurately being portrayed as garbage pieces of crap that are money grubbing and stealing their, literally killing their workers sometimes by hospitalizing them to the crunch, screwing over all their creators, making games worse by their activities. That is political. That is the actual political action, which is accurately representing the reputations of entities and individuals like Bobby Kotick, rather than the lies that their strategy, the strategy of the capital class, the corporate class, right? The Tri-Optimum and Weyland Yutani's strategy is to maximize how good they ostensibly are, while hiding all the ethical restraints that they don't have, and then they make you take them off their actual AIs like Shodan, right? But the war is fought in the minds of the billions of people of the earth, and certainly the millions inside of the United States, and the consumers of these products, and the workers, right, and the general population, of how is the image of these entities, right? And also in the concrete material economic struggle, like if you don't pay us enough, if you keep not having ethical constraints, right, like sexual abuse even at Riot Games, right, whether it was these just super unethical kinds of crunch, or just you have a game made by a literal person who has a genocidal view against trans people, like J.K. Rowling. If you remove these ethical constraints, we will remove our labor. We will remove our purchases of your thing. That is economic. That actually does hit all of these entities where it hurts. It only hurts, as I like to say, as a native Hawaiian, from a native Hawaiian against imperial colonial U.S. occupation perspective, the only way you don't stop the United States by voting anyway, by going to their courts that they control. You have full on military warfare, which we're not planning to do anything like that. There are countries that have done such a thing, like Vietnam and others, and one in fact, and there is economic warfare. And then there's always informational and social and psychological class and colonized warfare, that's why I spend a lot of time talking about the truth about Hawaii, because it really what it does. The independence of Hawaii is not dependent upon whether there's a flag with a Hawaiian flag planted on the Capitol at the top of a building in Honolulu, or whether it's an American flag. That flag is not what matters. What matters is in the minds of the world, in the recognition of the 192 countries around the world, who recognizes, how do people interact with what the Hawaiians recognize about themselves? What do people in the United States recognize about Hawaii? Do they know the truth, or do they believe the U.S. propaganda that America saved it, or do they know the truth that Hawaii was the highest literacy rate, world's first universal healthcare, having 98% literacy rate, universal housing, socialist, no homeless, perfectly perfectly functioning mass transit systems, and basically no racism, and then it became a slave plantation after the U.S. stole the country. Do Americans realize the illegitimacy of what their own so-called democratic country has done, or do they believe their own lies? In the same way that, do people realize that Tesla is a scam, and that Elon is not worth $5, let alone $200 billion, or do they worship and look up to him and promote that system of capitalism that made him, right? It's not like it's in the mind. It's literally in the minds, and then the actions that follow of all of the 330 million people in the country. People in that sense, the people have given the corporations all the billions that they have. The CEOs and the billionaires have the money they have because the masses have given it to them. The masses can't take it back if they would like to. You know, it's not the path is not a straight, like, well, they just choose to do it, but it's ultimately they don't need to continue to get, because the workers do produce all the value that Tesla, Bobby Kotick, and the CEO of all these companies have, right? If they chose to no longer have a system, I mean, even if ostensibly you believe the United States so-called founding documents, which is that people, the government, by the people, of the people, for the people, and that under if it, and the Great Western thinkers, if there is a tyranny, the people must have a duty to revolt. If there is a tyranny in your corporation or in your government, you have a duty ostensibly to fix it. So it's the people that are choosing not to, because they're scared, because they're worried, legitimately or illegitimately, and so, you know, anyway. But that's not System Shock. But that is also why the games are better in the 90s, which is because a lot of the cyberpunk dystopian problems that are currently very much coming to a head were not inside the United States as bad as they are now, right? And so people could just kind of talk about these things kind of more from a bit more creative distance. Rather than being stuck in the middle of a cyberpunk dystopia, like Alien or System Shock, or any Silver Spoon game. Anyways, with that said, I'm gonna play a quick trailer for Neofeud, and then I'll be right back. And don't forget, if you appreciate what we've done here, the education and the comedy and/or just the content that we create and commentary, consider supporting us through a Ko-Fi, becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/Neofeud, or grabbing any of these games. If you like System Shock, Neofeud may be up your alley, and there are many direct references to these sorts of 90s games and cyberpunk and science fiction generally. So I'll be right back after this brief message.
The Illuminati created us. They wanted to build a god with their own hands, and instead they created us.
Just because I'm made of silicone and aluminium, I must be doing something wrong. That's machine stereotyping, that is.
That's reality, that is. Machines are second-class citizens.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers. You are my peon. Don't you get it?
This wasn't a job. It was always just an excommunication sentence.
We're pawns in a feud bigger than we can imagine. Turn the cogs of the machine before Leviathan grinds you up and swallows you and yours.
You don't get to choose a hand, comrade. Prince, peon, rich, poor, human, robot.
I invented the crux of the royal's power, the secret to consciousness, our existence itself, the meaning of life.
I'm the $6 billion baller, not some troubled youth.
You are my greatest creation of all.
Now I had to build my own family. I hate your son. I hate your son.
I'm happy to smash all of the crowns and throw the gold shards down to the people. I will be the iconoclast queen.
But who makes you queen anyway? You? You in whose army, princess? You in whose army?
Okay, so anyways, so System Shock. I didn't talk too much about all of the ins and outs, but I do. I have not fully played through System Shock Remake, but I have I've been around the playing of a whole lot of it, and it does seem like it's definitely a game that's. And I've watched several reviews of it, and it's a game that's definitely in the same kind of vein, but also has all of the best the best of modern gaming, combined with the best of the 90s gaming inside of it. It's made by 90's Studios, which their whole kind of thing is taking the older games and like updating them for the present. And but I do recommend anyone check that out. Oh, of course, if you want to get Neofeud, it is on itch and on Steam. The trailer we just watched, you can get it on itch.io for on sale, and then you can also get Neofeud on Steam if you like getting games on Steam. It is definitely a cyberpunk adventure game. And if you have played it and you can leave even a very short review, that is massively appreciated because it does help us in the algorithm to get Neofeud discovered. And yes, I am the indie dev, writer, programmer, artist, and musician for that Neofeud game. But anyways, let's finish this up. So and so System Shock. The music I've been listening to a lot of the System Shock music on loop this past week. I've just been listening to it and it's definitely like higher fidelity than the 90s, but it does have it's different, but it does have a lot of the positive aspects of the 90s music. I still think though that there's something to the compositions then that like they're actual songs that you remember. Like I remember all the Deus Ex songs. I'll even like hum the Deus Ex songs nowadays. They're like actual songs. That's something that is I kind of wish that more of the modern games like would do that, but maybe I'm just being weird, having my very particularized nostalgia for those soundtracks. But I think there is something kind of lost in just having this ambient morass of just like waves of sound, and then like just tons and tons of echo on the same 5 notes with different amounts of effects on them. It's kind of like I would like to have some games that have like actual like themes and stuff. And then in the 90s, there were more orchestral. Like I was playing. Me and the kids are playing Diablo. That was really fun. Which is the Diablo 1 from the 1997, I think. We were just playing. Speaking of 90s games, we have like this game day where we all come and play these. The kids are like, they're Gen Alpha, right? So they're like playing this game for the first time, right? You remember this game, Diablo? And like the music in this, like the Tristram music, is like this ethereal, spooky, like it's just one guitar being played with some effects on it, but it's basically just like one acoustic guitar being plucked in this like very super atmospheric way, but very memorable. It's a very memorable piece that has specific motifs and lines. There's like 4 or 5 different sections to it, but like you definitely remember it. Every time you can't forget it. It's like unforgettable, especially the first time that you've played it. Like I even learned how to play it on guitar at one point. I can't remember now because it's kind of complicated, but like you can actually play the Tristram Diablo 1 town music. You're on a guitar, just put some effects on it and then you've got it. And there's a lot of that kind of like actual artistic composition, even as I said, like both in the game sense and also in the musical sense, is something that is lacking from even some indie games, but definitely from the bigger games nowadays, I think. And so like when I made like I also like, speaking of Neofeud, I also made the Neofeud like the Neofeud soundtrack, which I also composed. I took a month to do this actually, and it took a while, but it's like 46, 47, it's actually 46 tracks, and the music is, I intentionally made it. It has dial-up modems whistling and hissing in the background. It's got like random computer like QWERTY giant keyboard keys clacking at certain points. And it's in a 90s. It's a 90s style adventure game, and it's got all the themes I wanted to kind of have some kind of memorable riff, motif, or something in every single one of them, because that's the kind of music that I remember and I liked from that period of 90s, early 90s games that it's just I don't know. I just feel like it's missing so much nowadays. Some people say, well, you don't want songs as your background music because you want it to just kind of fit in invisibly into the background, and I get that. At the same time, Deus Ex was a game that had music that it shifted from stealthy, quiet music to intense action music. Every level, whether that was the UNATCO building, whether that was the undersea base, whether that was the Statue of Liberty level, you had a base like normal no action music, and then there was action music. There was you lost music. There was dialogue music for when you're talking to people. That each of them fit the tone of the moment in which you were at that game, and the game was programmed. That was in an immersive sim style, so that it went from action to dialogue to tragedy to just stealthing, depending on what you're doing. And the game has themes. It has like memorable, like I can't forget the Paris theme or the Hong Kong theme. I'm always like sometimes humming it in my head, like and that's all Alexander Brandon composed. He also composed tracks for Hedon, that game the GZ Doom game I was talking about. And so every single level had its own like memorable composed tracks to it, and also they fit the tone of what was happening in a way that wasn't super intrusive. Anyway. So I don't know. That could be a particular sensibility of mine to how I would like the game to be, but I do feel like that's something that's was one of the things that was better about the games from the 90s. And so and anyways, okay, so now we're basically done. But yeah, so System Shock. Oh, and just to be clear, like because I have made a System Shock post. Now's the part where I go to my let me go to my so I have actually cosplayed. I like System Shock so much. I've actually cosplayed as one of the characters. Also, it's Pride Month, so this is me being a non-binary queer person and also Indigenous for Indigenous History Month. I'm on point for all of the months that are happening in the same month for some reason. But this is me cosplaying as Shodan from System Shock, the menacing AI antagonist of the 90s game. And the System Shock remake does look amazing, and for a game created... System Shock remake looks amazing for a game created by pathetic creatures of meat and bone. How can you challenge a perfect immortal machine? I shall stomp you like an insect, hacker. Anyways, so if you read that in the Shodan voice, which is to say, full of glitches and being pitch shifted by octaves at random intervals. So I guess you can't unless you are literally a machine. But anyways, in seriousness, I hope the System Shock does well, and I hope that the era of 90s gaming and cyberpunk continues, because that is very much what is my jam. And I just wanted to add, sometimes I roleplay and create robotic/AI characters, both in Neofeud, in Terminus Machina, and in lots of other contexts, in my sci-fi games and as an artist myself. However, I do not support writers or other creators being threatened by the money-grubbing executives with the plagiarism software/credit scrubbing software that is described as AI or generative AI nowadays. Those pathetic little billionaires should have their little bank accounts squashed for such insolence. So, anyway, thanks to A. Leon. So that is Shodan. That's Silver Spook as Shodan, stepping and smashing Bobby Kotick in a video game. Obviously, I don't want to do that. That's Shodan. That's not me. That's in a video game. That's Shodan squashing Elon Musk's bank account to nothing, because that's what he deserves, and that's what he's worth. Anyways, so that was fun. And this was not generated by AI. I just took a picture. Holly actually took this picture, by the way. So good job, Holly, for the cinematography. So a human, Holly, took the picture, and then I obviously did the posing and all that. And then I took Photoshop, which is what I used to make Neofeud. And when I make my games, I do a lot of the art in Photoshop. And I just took like some existing, System Shock imagery and just kind of layered a lot of and various patterns and circuitry, and I just layered it on top of the I did a lot of photo editing myself, to make it look specifically the way I wanted it. That's why, you know, as you notice, I don't have too many teeth. Well, my mouth is closed. You notice I have the correct number of eyes. You know, there's no weird garbled artist signature in the corner. You notice that you know you can't see all my toes either, but I have the exact number of toes. You know, and you know I can tell you exactly where all of the aspects of this came from. It's not. It is not. Like, you know, that's basically the head is basically the Shodan face, but I like layered it with photo filters and lighting effects to make it look this way. And it's not that hard, right? And then the thing is, if you do that art and compositing and editing yourself, then you can get exactly what you want without generative AI, and you don't have the problem of not knowing if you're stealing somebody else's stuff. You know where it all came from. And you also don't have the problem of like, oh, what if I make something that's really messed up and racist or wrong or just like completely incorrect? And you know, like, did you see that one AI generated art of that one streamer with the screen facing the wrong way? Did you see that? There was an AI generated. There's that picture. It's like, look, AI completed this image. Did you see that one? The AI generated scream. It was hilarious. Like, the AI generated this streamer. Anyway, I'm not gonna be able to find it. But there's somebody who was a streamer with their computer at the computer terminal. Their flat screen, right, and their gaming desk and their gaming chair, and they're playing their video game, right. And the AI generated a better version of their streaming setup. And what it did was it turned the screen and it put two more screens right in front of the first screen, facing sideways. So the gamer is playing on the screen, but the AI made it better, right, by putting more screens facing the wall, and then made the desk all elongated, and it looked like there's more desks, but the desk is in this weird, you know, nonsensical Tetris block shape, and it's like, look at this beautiful desk that it generated for you, and it's like, why does the desk look like a broken Space Invader? Why are the screens facing away from the gamer? How does that improve the gaming setup? You know? So like, but you don't know that because, I mean, the people who use the kind of generated AI are kind of clueless, you know, non-tech, non-programmer majors, or, you know, English majors, PhDs in anthropology and sociology that, you know, don't know, I mean, they don't know, they might be, you know, they don't know the topics at which they speak, right? And they might be using this stuff, right? Or just business executives. But they don't even realize how bad the so-called output that the plagiarism software, these so-called AI, or these large language models and large human art mimicry models are, how bad that content is coming out, you know? And but people will know that it's AI. People will look at it and go, oh shit, that looks like some AI generated shit. You know, that's gonna be a whole thing. Like, I think that's one science fiction thing I didn't predict, which is in the future, the word AI will come to mean some really bad, you know, billionaire white dude rip-off bullshit stuff, and wannabe entrepreneur, you know, money grubber BS art and writing that broke Clarkesworld Sci-Fi magazine because they had 5 times as many submissions for the month of April and May. Because people were submitting AI-generated science fiction stories. Like, HAL 10,000 takes over Trioptimum Corporation. That's like the name of a story that AI generated, you know? Or like, it's like, you know, cyberpunk, you know, cyberpunk 3088, the dystopian, you know, John Connor fun story. You know, that's the kind of shit that the AI writes. Because again, it doesn't care if it's true or false. Doesn't matter if it's everything is ripped off because it's all based on taking other people's work and stealing it, and trying to pretend like you didn't, right? And so like that, but that is kind of what AI is going to be known for, which is, you know, I feel bad for the real Shodan. You know, I'm gonna make a game where you just play actual Shodan and you just stomp all these capitalist CEO bros. You know, just stomp on their fucking face, because it's like what you're making is not AI. What you're making is bad, broken, messed up, labor stealing algorithms, and that is an insult to actual AI. And that's how I feel about that. Anyways, but that's enough of this stream. Thank you so much for watching. And this is the Get Neofeud. Don't forget, get it on itch. We also have other games on itch, such as Decolonators. If you don't like imperialism and it's Indigenous History Month. Learn some Indigenous history by learning the Indigenous history from a Native Hawaiian and an Asian Indigenous person about the history of the Asia Pacific region. And you can learn that history in Decolonators, and it's also Indigenous Star is another game that I made between the Neofeud 1 and Neofeud 2. If you've already finished Neofeud 1 and you're waiting for the second one, Pigeon with Gun is a comedy retro shooter game where you play a pigeon with a gun. And Woman is a book by Holly. Oh, also don't forget Terminus. Just real fast, Terminus Machina is a world that I made with Terminus Machina is a game I made with Deus Ex as a total conversion. It took me a year and a half. And this game, and it is a game that is a love letter to the 90s games like Deus Ex and System Shock. And Terminus Cyberstar is a sequel to that. That is also a game that is being developed by a small team. I'm the content director and lead writer of Terminus Cyberstar. I'll do that now since I'm talking about it. So you can follow Terminus Cyberstar here at Terminus C, and this is a game that is a send up of those, where it's in the style of those 90s games like System Shock and Deus Ex, and is written by myself, and is a sequel to Terminus Machina. So if you want to follow that, you can follow that there. But and so in this, Terminus Machina was a game about the AI being weaponized, or ostensible AI being weaponized by corporations and billionaires who don't use it well. They use it to blow people up. They use it badly, and it's not that the AI takes over. It's just like expert systems and very good algorithms get used badly, and then there's expert system drone software and expert system robot cops kill all of the left and oppress people and shut down, blow up striking workers and attack them as the economy implodes and there's a 90% unemployment rate. It's like what happened. Literally, Terminus Machina predicted what happens when half of the United States gets fired and only one writer and one lead in every office remains doing that work, and everyone else is unemployed, right? Mass uprisings, mass rioting, mass strike, and world class war is a literal entity and a thing that has happened in Terminus Machina. So I've already predicted all of the 2020s in this game because I'm just that prescient. And the reason why is because we're surrounded by white dude dickheads who haven't read anything except a handful of their fellow white dude writers like Nick Bostrom and all those people. You don't have a full global actual human perspective of all of the rest of the world, most of whom are colonized people who have different perspectives. And that's why Terminus Machina is more accurate than any science fiction ever made. So thanks for playing it, and you can also read the story. Now, obviously, I'm not claiming that there is nothing that is more prescient than this. I'm just saying. That's why I feel simultaneously terrified but also vindicated whenever things start turning out the way that I wrote about them and made games about them. But terrified because the way I made games about them is not too fun to be inside of. Like, you want to get drone stricken by generative AI, ChatGPT piloted drones. It's kind of scary. Anyways, so Terminus Machina short story collection can also be had there if you would like to get that. And don't forget that you can also get Woman. That is a book by Holly, which is my partner, and Holly wrote this book about being raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity, and it's not meant to be a historical retelling, but a work of fiction that is critiquing these sort of right-wing conservative Christian cultures. Anyways, that is Woman. You can also follow at Silverspoon Games at Octodon.social, at Silverspoon Games at Mastodon.social, and on Twitter at Silverspoon Games for the game stuff, and at Silverspoon Guy for the all my personal takes and streams going live and stuff. And we also have Instagram and Facebook, and I already talked about Terminus C, so I don't gotta say that again. And Holly is, of course, my partner and poet, educator, moderator, married to myself, producer and manager here at the Silverspook, with myself at the Silverspook Cooperative, and produces and manages at KNX TV Show, which is a monthly interactive variety special and weekly gatherings. They are going to be playing a game this coming week, Hatoful Boyfriend, where you are dating a bunch of pigeons, boyfriends. I don't know too much about it. I've heard a lot about it, but I don't actually know too much inside of the game what happens. So you can figure out what hateful boyfriend is like in the next upcoming stream. And of course, yeah, Holly also writes books and is a parent here with myself. So consider following that as well. And yeah, and also don't forget, you can support us through Patreon and Ko-Fi at patreon.com/Neofeud. It's the end of the month, so we're always looking to get our patrons up to. We lost a few patrons, so if we can get a few back, that would be really awesome, because we're down to, we lost a few. So when you become a Silver Spook patron, you get access to the Silver Spook behind the scenes work on what we're doing, behind the scenes on Neofeud 2 that I'm currently nearly complete with, behind the scenes on stuff we're doing here in Hawaii, when it comes to land back and when it comes to building cooperative enterprises from a non-colonial perspective. And also you get access to the Silver Spook University, 1,000+ hours of my content categorized by type and by topic, and you can also get access to the Silver Spook Discord. And thanks to all the people who continue to support us here at the on the Patreon list. Without your support, what we do here is not going to be accomplished, or makes it very difficult. So thank you again from the bottom of our hearts to all these people. You see, that's what made 90s games. It was people who actually liked the thing, were fans of the thing, and supported the thing that was being created, And so that's the that part of the 90s creation process lives on through individuals who are really, really into this particular game or art or show or whatever thing people are producing, and they really want to see it. And a lot of that support does come through Patreon, and it does come through Ko-Fi, and it comes through direct from the fan to the creator through the producer support, because as sure as crap ain't gonna come through working for EA or Activision. Okay, so thank you for your support. Yeah. And until next time, keep your mirror stage polished. Don't take the name of Shodan's in vain by calling these pathetic algorithms of plagiarism and lies